Welcome back to Nate Talks about the yearbook. Well, not the yearbook, but Nate's yearbook. This episode I'm going to go through and kind of outline kind of where we are at in terms of a season. So I'm going to go through all of season 1, and then in a later episode go through season 2, because I mentioned that I really want this to be about 3 seasons max. This is because I only did yearbook for 2 semesters, and so I don't know how much content I can write out for this. Obviously, that's part of being creative. That's part of having the content and being creative. But I think telling the story is the most important part. And if I tell the story in 2 seasons, great, I'm done. The story's over. There's not much else to tell. It's kind of like the end of a movie. Everything's got to end at some point. And if things are going well, sales are going really great, advertising money is coming through, revenue's going really well, that's a whole other thing that needs to happen when we get there. But I need a plan for sure 2 seasons, because then, if only 1 happens, a bummer. But if a 2 happens, then the story ends. And if, they're like, okay, we're canceling your show after 2 seasons, well, great, my story's over, it doesn't matter anyways. So, I'm going to go through kind of each storyline and kind of discuss what each one is about and kind of overview. So I'm going to start with the pilot. The pilot, the audience meets the entire cast and kind of learns about each character's story and how they are viewed by the other characters. The audience gets to meet Mandy Hume, the yearbook representative, and introduces a love interest for Nick. Nick is able to stand up and uses his voice to get the attention of other students, which he didn't really previously know that he had. So that's the pilot, just to get everybody introduced. It's kind of just a general feel-goody story, kind of like an intro to everything. There's a lot going on all at the same time. So because the pilot ends on a cliffhanger, right in episode 2, it's called The Staff. The first episode is going to be called The Yearbook. I think it's going to be and then whatever the subject is. Vaguely the subject. So episode 2 is called The Staff. It picks up right after the pilot. And Nick looks on at the class, gets clammy, rushes to the bathroom, and throws up. And that's how it starts. Right into rolling, like, the intro card, right away. Like, we're jumping right back into this mess. I'm not going to waste any time on doing it. Kind of get everybody going and set the pace for this movie, which is going to be pretty quick. So, back in the classroom, Walker is trying to get the staff to draw their attention away from what just happened. We learn more about the characters and more about the class and more about kind of what's happening. I'm planning on adding a character into this episode that they're going to have to deal with, just kind of an antagonist for the episode. Not someone who's going to be, long-term an antagonist, but just someone who's an antagonist for the episode. Episode 3 is the teacher, and after episode 2, it's the first episode that'll have like a conclusion to the thing, and won't be going into the next one, so it doesn't directly flow, but it'll be the first one with some form of conclusion. Episode 3 is called The Teacher, and it's an Arabic teacher, that may change. We'll see what happens, but that may change. But it's an Arabic teacher who gives really, really trash grades, and he requires all the students to answer a question in his office hours, and the question is either you pass or you fail. It's a pass-fail question. And Nick actually answers the question correctly, and he's the only one to do it. And the teacher gives the first smile that the students have ever seen. This is another one of those episodes that, and not that it doesn't fit in the storyline, but it's creating and setting the scene for the rest of the season and kind of what this school's about. Rather than just showing a few select teachers, a few select students the entire time, it's broadening and kind of opening up the universe to be a bit bigger than what it was previously. Episode 4 is called The Representative. The yearbook team finally gets to meet Mandy, and so they kind of struggle with getting progress done on any of the book because they're dealing with her and Mike Walker's relationship with the yearbook teacher, and because how they're starting to kind of intertwine a little bit at a scary rate. Episode 5 is going to be called The Field Trip. So this is where it kind of goes into the downward spiral, not even a downward spiral, but kind of just the descent into the finale of the season, the grand finale, because we're now, it's 10 episodes in the season. We're right at the midpoint, so this is where it's all coming downhill for the resolution, for the big grand thing, the big hurrah. This is called the field trip. The school decides that they want to take their senior class on a field trip. They decide to go to the Natural History Museum. The students that are left behind are required to continue to still work on the yearbook, and because Sam is not a senior, she is still left behind. And so the seniors cause chaos within the museum, and Nick and Sam finally begin to get close over text. So kind of inner working this universe a little bit more. I know I was thinking about setting it in the 90s, but I think for now setting it over text would be interesting. It would be a little bit different. And if I decide to set it in the 90s, I have Nick talking with one of her good friends, who's also a senior. And Sam is talking to one of Nick's friends, not in a romantic way, but who is a friend of Nick's in a friendship way, and who's also not a senior. So that way they're each talking to someone who has a relationship with each other and help build that connection, and the audience knows more than they do. Next is called the relationship. So picks up kind of right after the field trip. Sam and Nick finally they get to talk a little bit more. The relationship starts to begin. This is kind of centered around this relationship, but also Mandy and Walker's relationship. Mandy and Walker, their relationship finally starts to get ground, finally starts to see what's happening, and we kind of learn that Walker is going to be living this double life. In a way, he's going to be a professional with her because he has to be professional, but also a romantic life with the antagonist of the story, and so he's trying to keep it away from the students in this episode. Episode 7 is called The Step In. So after a complete mess from the field trip, after no work being done, Walker shows up, shows his darker and angrier side, and kind of lashes out at the class and turns the class against them for the first time. And so the editors are now caught right in the middle of this, where Walker's pissed off with the class for not doing anything, and the class is pissed off with Walker and the editors because they aren't controlling the situation, and so the editors are caught in the middle. Jaden goes to Principal Harper to talk about how to solve these issues, and Jaden and Harper click really well. They're both very similar characters in how they talk and act, and they go really well together. So they have a meeting, they talk, and they manage to calm everything down in a meeting with everybody. And so it's kind of a grabbing the project by the balls moment that Jaden has, and she's kind of taking a little bit more of a leadership role over everybody else, which is a first. We've never seen her take control, but only when she finds that she can relate with this person in power, Principal Harper, she's finally able to jump ahead and be like, alrighty, this is my project, let's see what we can do here, let's see what happens. Next is called The Late Night. This one is kind of interesting. It's a bottle episode, and a bottle episode is an episode in a TV show where each character, the characters are the main central characters inside of one location. So they don't really travel outside of the location next to at all. Maybe once or twice, but otherwise it pretty much stays within a room. And so I plan on having them staying in the room, in the yearbook room, exclusively. Maybe in the hallway, but pretty much exclusively in the yearbook room. And so the editors are tasked with going through all the pages before the final deadline. We learn about each character's past. So we prior learned about where they're at now and kind of more about their lives in episode 2. But in episode 8, we're learning about their past and really getting the characters now. We now get these characters. We see how they're acting and see what's happening before the grand finale. And the grand finale is called Homecoming. The Homecoming, which is episode 9 and 10. So it's a 2-part conclusion to the series. The Homecoming Part 1, it's a homecoming game. The students are all super pumped to be there. The yearbook team and the football team are super excited and to get working on the book, to get homecoming going. They've got people scheduled to take pictures, and the football team ends up losing 52-3. This introduces Adam Williams and the class president, Timothy Davis, who hang out with Nick. And after the game, each character kind of splits off to do their own thing. Nick, Adam, and Timothy, they all split off to do their own thing. David, who was introduced in the first episode, he kind of does his own thing. Doesn't really hang out with Adam and Timothy, but kind of does his own thing. Jaden and her boyfriend and her friend group do their own thing, and then Potter and Ryan go off to do their own thing. So kind of everybody splits up, and so we kind of the next episode is a very interesting one. It kind of hops all over the place. So it's called The Homecoming Part 2, obviously, and it's the homecoming dance. So now we're at the dance, and the end for the after party. So this episode will be a lot longer, and I probably will end up splitting it into a 3-parter or a 2-parter and calling the first one the game, and then going from there. But for now, it's going to stick with this. It's the homecoming dance, and Nick and Sam are there at the dance, as well as Jaden and her friends, and Potter and Ryan are also there for a little bit. So kind of the dance happens. Nothing crazy, nothing outrageous, which is great. People take pictures. Everybody has a great time. It's all good and cool. And they head to the after party, and so they have an after party at the school. Kind of similar to an after prom, but it's the after party, so it's just one party. Just nothing crazy, just kind of a hangout. And the school's reasoning behind it would be like, we want you to be safe, don't drink, blah, 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 whatever they would say. And so Nick and Sam are at the party at school. Potter and Ryan are at their own party, and Jaden is also at her own separate party. And so the story hops between each party, telling the stories of all of them. And so Potter and Ryan, their storyline is they're beyond drunk at a friend's house, and so they're getting just trashed, and kind of their descent into what they keep going. Jaden and her boyfriend end up breaking up at their party, and so that party kind of ends up in chaos. And to end the entire season, Nick and Sam have their first kiss at the homecoming party at the school. So that's how the season ends, kind of concluding, the Nick and Sam saga, if you will, kind of wrapping it up in a nice little bow. So I think that's pretty solid for a first season. Usually seasons are 12 to 24 episodes, depending upon what the show is. And I think 10 episodes for this is pretty reasonable. Anything more, it'll end up getting too repetitive, and I would hate to create a formulaic show. I want each show to be unique, and each one to be its own fun feel, and each week you're coming back to it like, I don't know what's going to happen next. And eventually, if you end up wanting to binge the show, you start from episode 1 all the way to 10, and each episode is its own separate crazy experience. And I think that's just so great, and I think that's why I love the TV aspect so much. It would just be a fun way to tell it. And I think it's going to be super exciting. And the next episode, I'm going to go over season 2 and kind of discuss what season 2 will look like. Kind of discuss kind of where my thoughts are with how it should look and how it'll feel. It'll feel very similar, but we'll discuss kind of the first few episodes in that one. Thank you so much for listening. Have a great one.